I've told the story before, so I'll tell it very, very briefly. A man that I met in Venezuela, after I'd left Venezuela, his story got through to me via a mutual acquaintance. He had a daughter who was expecting, and the hospital system has run out of money completely. So what he did was he basically sold all of his worldly possessions. He carried the money that he got from that to the Colombian border, which is a grueling journey. That's not imagine you've seen the pictures of like Halong Bay in Vietnam and these places with these hills that are like this going in and out of the water. Well, that's what the hills around that part of Venezuela and Colombia are like. Obviously not in the water, but they're like that. They're just these vertical up and down things. It is a grueling journey. He had to get on a bus. It was multiple days of travel. Get to the border, find a Colombian smuggler, and there's plenty of them because there's an enormous amount of illegal trade going on because they depend on that for survival in Venezuela. Hand over his entire net worth, the entire value of his life, basically, to this smuggler who then disappears and comes back to him with a package. In that package were painkillers, antibiotics, antiseptics and antiseptic wipes, saline solution, clean bandages, hypodermic needles, scalpels, the absolute basic consumables that we take completely for granted at every single GP's office in anywhere in Australia. And yet they do not have them in the universal healthcare system of Venezuela. And this is the thing, just like you pointed out with that photo, people paint this romantic picture. People say, oh, but Venezuela has cheap petrol and universal healthcare and universal education and this and this and this. Yeah, on paper they do. You can tick all of those boxes, but you don't want to live that reality. And in Australia, we think that we can't end up there. And unfortunately, we can.
Yeah, and I mean, I said this a couple of weeks ago. I said that Australians deserve socialism because we're at that point. And I think our biggest issue is, everyone that's here in the chat is mostly aligned with us, to a degree.
Yeah.
The problem is the people who aren't feeling this pinch are people who are working in the public sector, people who are employed by the NDIS, people who have guaranteed jobs, whether they work in healthcare and whatnot. And so they're not seeing it. They're not privy to it. They're not seeing that shrink. And that's what it is. It's not like a immediate overflow like zombie apocalypse. It's a slow, creeping, crawling crumble. And for example, I mean, COVID was different because obviously that was a lockdown. So we just stopped services. But the backlog on surgeries, on people not going to the dentist and people not getting the
cancer screenings.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
But now it's the opposite. So G has a client who's a dentist and he was chatting to him and saying, oh, how's things? How's business? Now this is a dentist. Everyone has teeth. Everyone has cavities. Sure. Everyone needs a dentist. This dentist was saying work is so slow. People aren't going to the dentist. Why? They can't afford it. It's at the bottom of the priority list. Now, the only reason people go to the dentist is if they absolutely have to because they've got a toothache. Very few people doing preventative stuff at the moment. And it's the same for, screenings and tests and things like that. And this is that slow creep, so that insidious creep. So, for example, you might have a cavity and if you went to the dentist today, it's just as simple as getting a filling. But if you leave it until the point where you get a toothache, you actually need a root canal. So it ends up being like $150 or $200 to $2,000. And
sorry.
No, that's all right. Go.
Well, this is kind of a universal principle. Being poor is very expensive. So if you're so poor that you can't buy the bulk pack of whatever it is and you have to buy them individually, you end up paying more per one. And if something were able to change for you and you could get that little bit of money so that you could buy the bulk pack, then you'd save a little bit of money and then you could afford to buy the next bulk pack of some other thing and save a bit of money there and so on. The same is true, of time. You get poor enough and you can't afford a washing machine. Now you're taking your clothing down to a laundromat. It's costing you an enormous amount of time, not to mention the cost of a laundromat these days. I don't know the last time you went to a laundromat. I had to wash a very large doona recently because the dog puked on it. And it cost me $40 by the time I walked out of the laundromat. And so if you're already poor, you drive a cheap car, it breaks down all the time. You end up in all these situations where you really do get sort of stuck and sucked down into that poverty. And that's why I think it is just so cruel when a government takes actions that make its people poorer. Obviously, Venezuela, Cuba, these are extreme cases. But in every society, including Australia, there are people who are only just getting by. There's the full spectrum. Yeah, okay, being poor in Australia is a lot better than being poor in Venezuela. I'd much rather be poor here. but I'd rather not be poor anywhere because it sucks. And
Yeah.
anytime a government does anything that makes life even more difficult and just adds to the suction, just sucking people down who are already struggling, I think it is just the height of cruelty.
Yeah, 100%. And I just wanted to point out this. I just saw this. Where did it go? Sorry, the comments move so fast. Here's one. Poor lol, I haven't eaten red meat in 3 months. Stay there.
Yeah, wow.
And then this one. I spend $30 per week on laundry. It's cheaper just to buy new clothes.
Wow.
Now, let's stick on that.
Yeah.
This is where you have the people who align with the socialism and the communism and the leftist ideology. They'll sit there and preach about sustainability, environmental, fast fashion's bad, fast furniture's bad, fast everything's bad. But in the same breath, they're telling you that you should be embracing green energy. We should all be having solar. We should all be saying no to gas. We shouldn't have fireplaces. So all these, the green policies. And what you're essentially doing is you're creating this market where to live as we were, which elevated everyone out of poverty, is no longer economically viable. So now you push people to exactly what you said, going to a laundromat because it's somewhat cheaper, or disposing of the clothes. And now, when was the last time you looked at a photo of Bangladesh?
Funnily enough, I watched a video out of Bangladesh just today. However, it's not a thing I do very often.
Now, a lot of people talk about India being very polluted and, third world. Bangladesh is the next level. And Bangladesh is where there's a lot of clothing trade, where a lot of the fast fashion stuff is made. For example, you big brands. That's where they make it, because India is no longer considered cheap. So you got to go further and further away. And mark my words, they'll start going to Africa soon. They'll start.
It's already migrating. Absolutely. Yep.
And what you see is such a disregard for basic sanitary conditions. There is no recycling. There is no garbage collection. People are defecating on the sides of the road. That's what it looks like, because it's no longer viable to live this life that we live, this privileged life. To them, it's just the bare basics. Will I survive today? Will I get cholera? Will I get typhoid? Will my baby have a fever? So when you see, sorry.
Let me put a slightly different lens on that. For them, it's not so much that it's no longer possible to live like we do. Those cultures have never lived like we do. They've never had the wealth to do that. And it can be a little bit difficult for us sometimes to separate. Like, we see people in Bangladesh, they're living in abject poverty, but a huge proportion of them have mobile phones. And we can't quite reconcile that, because for us, mobile phones came after sanitation. But they're emerging at a different time, and their priorities are different and their opportunities are different. So we need to make some allowance for that they are emerging at a different time and technologies exist differently. But fundamentally, I would rather be poor in Australia than middle class in Bangladesh, for sure.
Hey guys, thanks for watching another short clip from The Oddcast. If you want to watch the full video, it's over on YouTube at The Oddcast HQ, and you can see more from me and Topher over there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep up with us in the comments.